Luke is my son-in-law. The one who joked my recovery was just extended napping. Kara is my daughter, the one who smiled while spending the down payment I gave them. They rationed my soup, tracked my pills, laughed when they thought I was asleep. Now their house has a lien, their refinance is dead, and the bank calls me first. They thought I was fragile. They forgot I still hold the deed. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Elaine Carter clutched the handrail, her joints aching louder than her breath. Each step up to Kara and Luke's front porch felt like a negotiation between grit and humiliation. Her right hip, still stiff from the replacement surgery, trembled slightly beneath the thick beige wrap her physical therapist had shown her how to secure. The welcome mat read, "Come as you are," but the air behind the door suggested otherwise. "Do you need both hands on the railing?" Kara's voice chirped from inside, sweet but clipped, as if concern were on a timer. "It's just 5 steps." Elaine smiled anyway. 5 steps or 5 more than I was allowed to take last month. Luke appeared behind his wife with a forced grin. "You made it, Elaine. Let's keep the oxygen masks handy, huh?" He laughed. Kara did too. Elaine didn't. The first night, they served her a microwaved veggie bowl and left her with a folded fleece blanket in the den. "It's cozier down here anyway," Kara offered, gesturing at the couch like it was a resort suite. "And there's a half bath. No stairs. Perfect." Elaine nodded and smiled. The cushions dipped in all the wrong places. She didn't mention the sharp smell of dog fur in the corners, or that her walker didn't quite fit through the bathroom door. By day 3, the tension was as thick as the low-sodium broth in her mug. Every time she reached for her pill organizer, she caught the tail end of a sigh. Luke's sneaker squeaks up the hallway were always slower by her door, as if he were listening for groans. Kara left post-it notes everywhere. "Don't overuse the hot water. Remind Mom to keep ice packs labeled. No phone calls after 9. Elaine started noticing things. The volume drop when she entered a room. The subtle eye contact between Kara and Luke when she asked for help with laundry. The little jokes. "It's like living with a recovering houseplant," Luke had said one night after she'd gone to bed, not knowing the floor vents carried voices too well. But what cracked her wasn't sarcasm. It was indifference. Late Thursday night, she leaned on her cane and padded to the kitchen for a second dose of ibuprofen. The under-cabinet lights glowed soft and yellow, revealing just enough to avoid the dog bowl. That's when she heard it. Luke on speakerphone, laughing. "No, seriously, she's so high maintenance it's like we adopted a diva in orthopedic socks. Kara's losing it. I give it 3 more weeks max." Silence on the other end. Then mutual laughter. Luke added, "She doesn't even notice. I don't think she sees how much she's draining us." Elaine didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She turned and walked back to the den, slower than usual, but straighter. Inside her small tote, beneath her crossword books and folded discharge papers, was a sleek, steel voice recorder. A gift from her former co-worker, Alice, back when they both still ran the high school fundraising board. "Just in case you ever need to remember who said what," Alice had said. "People rewrite things. This doesn't." Elaine pressed record and walked slowly back to the hallway. Luke's voice, still on speaker, drifted out like an unpaid debt. "She's just not self-aware, you know. Like, when does it stop being about her recovery and start being about our life again?" Elaine caught every word. Back in the den, she emailed the audio file to herself under a new folder. Recovery logs. Then another backup to a private cloud account she hadn't touched since the divorce 14 years ago. From her phone, she opened a text thread with a name she hadn't typed in months. Deborah. Financial. Their last exchange was from the previous spring, just after Elaine had turned 61. Back then, Deborah had asked if she wanted to activate the fallback plan they'd outlined over lunch at Leona's Deli, a just-in-case escape fund they'd tucked away after Elaine sold her rental property and wanted to hide a nest egg from pity or pressure. Elaine stared at the old message. A new one arrived. Deborah. "Still want to activate the plan we discussed last year?" Elaine read it 3 times, then smiled for the first time in days. Elaine sat alone in the guest room, her right leg carefully elevated on a memory foam wedge, the heating pad blinking red beneath her thigh. Luke's laugh still echoed in her ears like the aftershock of a slammed door. High maintenance. She'd been called worse, but never by someone whose mortgage she'd quietly made possible. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her tea, still lukewarm. The air in the room smelled faintly of generic lavender laundry detergent. Their detergent, not hers. She had stopped bringing her own when Kara insisted, "Just let us take care of things for a while, okay?" A while. 5 years ago, she'd walked into the very house she was now being made to feel like a burden inside, holding a cashier's check worth $50,000. The realtor had barely looked at her, focused entirely on Kara and Luke, and she hadn't minded. Not then. Not when Kara's eyes sparkled at the prospect of not needing private mortgage insurance. "We'll pay you back, Mom," Kara had said, holding her hand tightly. "This just gives us such a head start." Elaine had waved her off. "It's not about payback. It's about security. Just remember it came from your father's pension." She'd smiled. He would have wanted this. But remembering wasn't the problem. It was the forgetting. These days, dinner was a lukewarm, half-filled bowl of off-brand mushroom soup, while Luke ordered bone-in ribeye from an app with a few quick taps. The house still carried the scent of seared meat and rosemary when she was handed a paper napkin and a polite, clipped smile. "This is all we had left," Kara had said once, spooning soup into a chipped bowl while a DoorDash driver rang the bell. Elaine noticed Luke didn't even offer to answer the door. He shouted from the hallway, "That better be the extra garlic sauce." It was a movie scene she'd seen before, just not one she'd expected to be living in. Later that night, while Kara and Luke watched TV downstairs, the bass thumping through the floorboards, Elaine sat upright in bed and powered on her laptop. The room was quiet except for the slow hum of her humidifier and the gentle tick of her wristwatch on the nightstand. She logged into her bank's archive system and pulled up transfers from the last 5 years. There it was, March 3, 2018, wire transfer, $50,000 to Kara N. Wilder and Lucas R. Wilder. Memo, home down payment assist, from Elaine M. Carter. She clicked Request Official Record, then opened a blank folder on her desktop and labeled it House Contribution, Evidence. As she worked, the sting in her hips seemed to quiet for the first time in days. The next morning, Kara stood in the kitchen in fluffy slippers, scrolling on her phone while absent-mindedly stirring oatmeal. She didn't look up when Elaine shuffled in with her walker. "I saved you some," she said. "It might be cold." Elaine nodded, opened the fridge and poured herself a glass of water, her own bottle, labeled in Sharpie. Her appetite was gone. Across the kitchen island sat Luke, chewing toast and watching a TikTok about passive income. He chuckled at something and looked up. "How's the leg, Elaine?" "Recovering," she replied. "Like most investments." He didn't catch the edge, or didn't care. Back upstairs, she double-checked her inbox. The email was already there. PDF attached. The transfer record was official, stamped, traceable, unforgotten. She forwarded it to her financial advisor, Deborah, with a 2-line note. "Found it. Let's pull thread number 2 next. Also, I want to talk about the Q4 folder." Her thumb hovered over send, then tapped. Downstairs, laughter rose again, hers not included. Elaine stared out her window at the driveway she helped pave, the siding she once helped pick colors for, the home that grew less hospitable every day. Let them laugh. She had something better than a comeback. She had a paper trail. Elaine's fingers hovered over her coffee mug, her gaze fixed on the steam spiraling into the air like a question she was tired of asking. The email from the bank had arrived hours ago, crisp and airtight, time-stamped proof of her $50,000 down payment. The silence in the house only made it louder. Kara was out getting her nails done. Luke was in the backyard pretending to rake leaves, earbuds in and shirtless despite the October chill. The TV mumbled in the corner, some cooking show judging someone's sauce. Elaine moved slowly but deliberately toward the living room. Her hips still ached, but she'd stopped wincing when she moved. She'd learned that showing pain was just another form of permission, and she wasn't handing that out anymore. On the console table sat Kara's open laptop, the screen still lit, probably left idle while she'd taken a break mid-Instagram scroll. Elaine wasn't snooping, at least that's what she told herself, but the screen was open to messages, and the group chat was blinking like an invitation. Family group, Kara, Luke, Scott, Dad's old iCloud, inactive. The most recent message was from Luke. She asked me if the soup had sodium. I almost snapped. This is like babysitting with bills. Elaine felt a flush crawl up her neck. Her cursor scrolled up. Kara, I love her, but come on. We didn't sign up for full-time elder care. We have jobs. We have lives. Luke, high maintenance isn't even the word. She's reorganized the fridge again. Scott, her youngest, her sweet boy, who once cried when she missed a school play, had finally chimed in, why didn't she save more? This isn't our problem. Elaine's breath didn't catch. It narrowed, as if the words vacuumed the oxygen out of the room. She kept scrolling. Kara again. The house is starting to smell like her ointments, and she watches the news like it's her hobby. Luke's stressed. Scott, you should look into long-term care insurance. Or maybe one of those hybrid facilities. Elaine closed the laptop slowly, like sealing a casket. She didn't cry. Not then. Not when her body still felt like a battlefield, and her children spoke of her as if she were excess luggage they couldn't wait to check. She returned to her guest room, shut the door softly, and picked up her phone. Her thumb tapped once, twice, then held. The safe deposit box app asked for facial recognition. It scanned, then opened. Folders lined the screen like digital bricks, each one a piece of the wall she'd built quietly over the years while everyone assumed she was just knitting and mailing birthday cards. She tapped one labeled Q4 Emergency Fund. There it was. CD account, $75,000. Municipal bonds, $40,000. Cash savings, unreported, $160,000. Miss C. Liquid assets, jewelry, art, silver, valued, $28,000. Total, $303,028. For a moment, her reflection shimmered on the phone's glass. No longer just a recovering patient, not a problem, not high maintenance, an investor, a planner, a woman who'd been underestimated in her own home. That evening, Kara brought in takeout, Thai this time, and set Elaine's plate aside. I got you the tofu pad CU, low sodium, she said, placing a plastic fork beside the box. Figured that's easier for your stomach. Elaine took it with a smile. Thank you, dear. Kara barely noticed that her mother didn't eat much. She was too busy laughing with Luke about how their couple's game night might need to be rescheduled because the house has a patient in residence. Elaine finished her tea, stood slowly, and made her way to the hallway. There, in the shadows, she whispered aloud to no one, I saved more than enough. Now let's see if they did. Back in her room, she opened her contacts and texted Deborah, her financial advisor. Checking in, I'm ready to start, let's schedule Monday. A minute later, the reply arrived. We'll activate phase 1. Quietly, full control still yours. Elaine set the phone down beside her pillow, then leaned back and closed her eyes. They thought the real cost was money. They hadn't even begun to understand the value of regret. The next morning, the cage got smaller. I called your pharmacy, Kara said, knocking twice before pushing the guest room door open without waiting. They said you're due for your muscle relaxers, but I think we should hold off. You seemed a little foggy yesterday. Elaine looked up from the armchair where she was knitting, not because she needed to, but because Kara expected her to be still and benign. I wasn't foggy, Elaine said. I was quiet. Kara smiled in that brittle way reserved for flight attendants and family with secrets. Same thing, sometimes. That afternoon, she asked to sit outside on the porch. Just 15 minutes. Fresh air. The crepe myrtle was blooming, and the breeze reminded her of early spring mornings when her husband used to bring coffee out to the swing. Luke stepped in. Sorry, Elaine. We just had the cushions cleaned. Could we keep you inside today? Elaine said nothing. She just folded her blanket a little tighter around her lap. 2 days later, her old friend Joyce tried to visit. Kara met her at the door. She's resting, she said, voice hushed. eyes pleasant. The meds really knock her out. Maybe next week? Elaine heard the front door click shut from the hallway. She stared at her own hands, folded perfectly across her lap like they didn't belong to her anymore. Her independence had been downgraded to when convenient. Driving was not safe. Calls were too tiring. Mail was just junk anyway. But Elaine remembered who she'd been, before the hip replacement, before the walker, before her children began speaking of her in budgets and margins. So when the visiting nurse came for her bi-weekly check-in, Elaine made sure they were alone. "You've been kind," she said softly, "and I'm going to ask something odd." Nurse Tanya looked up, curious. Elaine handed her a small envelope. "This is my new mailing address. Can you start redirecting any personal mail you find for me to this P.O. box?" Tanya blinked. "You're not supposed to receive—" "I know, but I also know how to spot financial isolation." Elaine's voice was soft but sharp. "I taught public school for 35 years. You don't get out of that career without spotting control tactics from a mile away." Tanya didn't argue. She just nodded and slid the envelope into her pocket like it was nothing more than a gum wrapper. The next week, Elaine waited. She kept smiling when Luke handed her pills with out labels. She kept nodding when Kara suggested she stop reading the news because it was agitating her mood. And she played the role of grateful guest when they served her a different meal than theirs because her stomach needed bland. And then, finally, on a Thursday afternoon when the rain had started gently tapping the windows like a metronome, Tanya dropped off a sealed manila envelope with no return address. Elaine waited until the house was empty. Luke had a racquetball league, and Kara was out with the girls for wine and venting. She slit the envelope open with a nail file. Inside were 2 notarized documents, updated power of attorney, revised trust allocation, both with her name, and only her name, at the top. Her lawyer had followed every instruction from that quiet call the week before. Her authority was now self-governed, her assets legally sealed, her decisions final. Elaine leaned back, the envelope still in her lap, and whispered, "Blankets are warm. But signatures? They're permanent." Outside, the crepe myrtle branches swayed against the sky like they knew something was coming. Elaine reached for her calendar and circled next Thursday. It wouldn't be pills or pity she took that day. It would be control. The POA documents lay neatly filed beside her breakfast tray the next morning. Kara hadn't noticed the change in tone behind Elaine's smile. Luke hadn't noticed much at all. Elaine stirred her oatmeal with slow, rhythmic care, the silver spoon tapping gently against the side of the bowl. Every movement felt like a silent countdown. In her mind, the plan had already begun to unfold. She waited until the house was empty again, a weekday lull when Luke was out golfing and Kara was at work. Alone in the guest room that had become a gilded cage, Elaine powered on her laptop. There it was. Emergency Reserve, Q4. She clicked the folder. The screen displayed her lifeline. 3 brokerage accounts, a CD she had opened 8 years ago, and a separate cash reserve labeled Private Property Option, Active. The current balance across the accounts read $275,894.63. For years she had contributed small, consistent amounts, birthday money never spent, pension interest, dividends reinvested, and then quietly withdrawn and reallocated. A habit learned from her own mother, who once said, "A woman's independence is best measured by how easily she can write a check." Elaine clicked transfer. That evening, after a careful phone call with her longtime financial advisor and an encrypted email to her attorney, the next phase went into motion. The wire cleared. The papers were drawn. And by Friday afternoon, a small, sun-drenched cottage on the east side of a 55-plus active living community, 3 miles from a lake and 5 minutes from her favorite tea shop, was officially hers. Paid in full, no mortgage, no shared deed, no family name but hers on the mailbox. The first time she saw it in person, she was escorted by a realtor who'd once been one of her 5th-grade students. "Ms. Sutter?" he'd said, blinking at her name. "You haven't aged a day. What brings you here?" "Privacy," she said, "and quiet floors." She toured the home with a grace that concealed the steel underneath. Hardwood throughout, skylights in the kitchen, a walk-in shower with a bench, a fireplace surrounded by built-ins that whispered, "You did not live modestly for this long to die quietly." She stood in the center of the living room, inhaling the scent of fresh paint, eucalyptus wood, and clean space. No pity, no sighs, no judgment. Just room. Back at Kara's, she moved with a choreographed precision. Elaine knew exactly what time the nurse would arrive, 9:30 sharp. She asked her for one last favor. "Will you escort me to my car tomorrow morning? I'll need help with 2 bags." Tanya raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She only nodded. Then Elaine folded the note. She placed it on the dining room table in the exact spot where she'd eaten lukewarm soup and been told to rest when the conversation got too real. The penmanship was clean, unapologetic. Doctor's appointment at 10, moving out at noon. Thank you for your hospitality. Elaine. That night she went to bed early, took her final round of meds with a glass of water and not a word, and closed her eyes in the room where she'd been treated like an expense on someone else's spreadsheet. She didn't dream. She calculated. She remembered every slight. She recalled every high-maintenance comment as if they'd been etched into drywall, and when the sun rose, it rose for her. The nurse arrived promptly. Elaine, dressed in her cleanest slacks and a soft blue cardigan, stood near the door with a light duffel and a wheeled suitcase. "Is this it?" Tanya asked. Elaine smiled. "It's the beginning. The end already happened." They stepped outside. Across the street, the mail truck rolled past. The cherry tree was starting to bud. Elaine moved slowly but freely, each step stronger than the last. Her phone buzzed. A text from her lawyer. Deed filed. Keys held at front office. Welcome home. Kara found the note just after pouring herself a second coffee. The sunlight was catching the corner of the envelope Elaine had left behind. Neat. Firm final. Doctor's appointment at 10. Moving out at noon. Thank you for your hospitality. Elaine. The mug slipped slightly in her hand, sloshing hot liquid down the side of her palm. She hissed, not from the burn, but the unraveling. She opened the guest room door. Empty. No suitcase, no slippers. The blanket Elaine had folded every morning with military precision was still creased across the end of the bed. And Kara had no clue where she went. By noon, the group text with her brother, her best friend Lindsay, and Luke lit up with passive panic. Kara, she's gone. No warning. Just disappeared. Lindsay, oh my God? Is she okay? Luke, she's probably making us look bad already. Kara, she left a note. She didn't even say goodbye. Luke tried to play it cool, but Kara's spiral was picking up speed. By 4 p.m., she was on her phone in selfie mode, eyes slightly red, voice quivering for effect. Hey friends. I just wanted to share something personal, she began, filming from the couch. She angled the camera for maximum vulnerability. Messy bun, untouched coffee, toddler blocks in the background for authenticity. We've been caring for my mom since her surgery. It's been hard. There's no manual for watching your parent age. Sometimes we don't get it right. But we tried. She paused, adding a sniffle. I just hope she's safe. Post caption. Aging isn't easy. Neither is caregiving. Prayers welcome. The post was up for 3 hours before Elaine saw it. Not because she followed Kara. She didn't. But because a woman named Judith from church, who hadn't messaged her in years, sent a private DM that read, "Sending love. I just saw Kara's post, but didn't you fund their home?" Elaine stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she opened her private Facebook group, Women Who Exit Quietly. Small, invite only, 10 members, all 60 plus. She posted a simple photo, a cropped screenshot of a 2018 wire transfer from her savings to Kara and Luke's mortgage lender. Amount, $50,000 memo line, down payment contribution to avoid PMI. Caption beneath it, just keeping my own records up to date. Love to all the ladies who know the difference between help and being used. What happened next wasn't loud. It was strategic. One by one, mutual acquaintances began quietly removing their likes from Kara's post. Then the comments turned colder. Marianne W. Funny, didn't she fund your wedding too? Darla J. You're trying your best now? Must have missed that when you left her at home during Easter. Kelsey T. My mom lives with me. I don't post about it, I do it. Kara tried damage control. She edited her caption, deleted 2 of the more dramatic sentences, swapped the word sacrifice for support. Too late. Screenshots were circulating in other corners of the internet she couldn't access. Elaine didn't respond publicly. She didn't need to. Instead, she replied to Judith's message with a thank you and then forwarded a second image, a photo of her new keyring, held gently between 2 fingers, sunlight bouncing off the tag that read, Unit 3B, Garden View. She shut her laptop and leaned back in her reading chair, the sapphire pendant around her neck glinting like punctuation. Her wine was chilled. Her dinner was on the stove. Her phone was on silent. The key clicked and the door opened like a sigh of relief. Elaine stepped into the condo she now owned outright. No mortgage, no co-signers, no shared deed. Just her name. Herein a faint scent of lavender greeted her first. Then the low, comforting hum of the HVAC kicked in. To the left, on the granite kitchen counter, sat a small bouquet of irises and eucalyptus, delivered an hour earlier, compliments of her realtor friend Monica. Welcome home, Elaine. Ownership looks good on you. The space was smaller than Kara and Luke's house, but it wasn't lesser. It was intentional. Every inch of Unit 3B felt curated, open, and unburdened. No passive-aggressive sighs, no whispered jokes when she asked for her walker, no rationed heating to manage the bill. Elaine set her leather tote down, exhaled, and slowly walked the perimeter. The natural light pooled in wide puddles across the bamboo floors. The bathroom was already stocked with eucalyptus-scented towels she'd ordered weeks ago. And the spare bedroom? Not for guests. That room had a locked file cabinet, a desk, and a safe with every trust document freshly signed. Across the table lay a thin manila folder, stamped in red. Leanne Review, active her nurse, Tanya, arrived 30 minutes later. Same warm smile, same gentle humor, but this time on Elaine's payroll, not Kara's. Ready to settle in? Tanya asked as she unpacked medication into a clean drawer. Elaine nodded. I was born ready. I just needed the keys. Tanya leaned against the counter. This place is beautiful. Much better light. Elaine smiled. Freedom always looks good in the daylight. That evening, Elaine made tea. Not microwaved, but steeped properly in her new electric kettle. She sipped slowly, phone in hand, and opened the app she rarely used for anything other than real estate scrolling. Her bank. She tapped on the tab marked Portfolio, then another, Documents. The lien request on Kara and Luke's property showed a confirmed receipt, and next to that, an upload. The original email from Luke, dated years ago. The $50,000 is amazing, and yeah, as long as she doesn't ask for it back, we're good. It had seemed like a harmless message at the time. Now? It was the thread that tied the whole case together. She closed the app and opened another. The secure chat thread with Monica, her realtor of 20 years. Elaine, can I pull title history on 1227 Birch Lane without triggering flags? Monica, already did. Still clean. You want me to poke the bear? Elaine, gently, like a woman adjusting her pearls. Monica, love it. You ready to list their house under lien review? Elaine paused for half a beat, watching the blinking cursor. Then typed, Elaine, yes. Quietly. Let the math do the talking. Outside her window, the city glowed in gentle streaks of gold and blue. Downtown in the distance, soft traffic murmurs below. A life she hadn't felt connected to in decades now shimmered outside her reach, and yet fully hers. She didn't feel high maintenance. She felt invested. A ding interrupted her thoughts. Text from Kara. Kara, where are you staying? The neighbors are asking. Elaine, where I can afford to live. Kara, is that supposed to mean something? Elaine, to you? Eventually. Elaine powered her phone down. She had no interest in defending her choices to those who only valued her as long as she stayed silent. Across the room, Tanya emerged from the hallway holding a framed photo she'd found in the bottom of a box. Want this by the fireplace? Elaine took it. A picture of her late husband, Paul, holding up a sold sign in front of the first home they'd bought together. She ran her fingers across the glass. "No," she said softly. "Let's put it on the desk, where all the decisions happen now." Her phone buzzed again, this time from Monica. "We've flagged the property. Discovery begins Monday. Want to come by the office for coffee and a strategy session?" Elaine smiled. Her new life came with a new kind of routine, one where she signed the contracts. Elaine sat across from Monica in a glass-walled corner office that smelled faintly of espresso and fresh toner. A legal pad lay before her, crisp and untouched, though the work was already done. "I've filed dozens of liens," Monica said, tilting her laptop toward Elaine, "but I have to admit, this one feels poetic." On the screen was the preliminary form. Claimant, Elaine M. Rafferty Property, 1227 Birch Lane basis, undocumented equity transfer, 2018 amount, $50,000. Elaine didn't smile. Not yet. She picked up her pen and signed her name in long, even strokes. "They always thought you were generous," Monica said, sipping her coffee. "Turns out you were just patient." Elaine folded the signed form and placed it gently back in the manila folder, careful not to wrinkle it. "They thought I wasn't keeping receipts, but I kept everything. In pencil first, then in proof." She could still hear the way Kara had laughed at her old paper budget book, how Luke once joked at dinner, "You still balance checks like it's 1987? That night, they'd ordered wine by the bottle. Elaine had eaten boxed couscous for lunch the next day. Back at her condo, Elaine opened the thick binder labeled Financial Records, pre-gift era. It was marbled green with brass corners, nothing flashy but built to last. She flipped to the 2018 section. Her original bank statement showed the wire transfer, $50,000, outgoing ACH, Birch Lane LLC. No memo, no contract, just a digital whisper sent during closing week. She remembered the day clearly. Kara was in tears, overwhelmed with PMI quotes. Luke had paced the kitchen, rattling off interest rates. Elaine had written the check while still in her gardening gloves, and now they called her a burden. She called Richard instead, her financial advisor of over a decade, still sharp at 68 with a voice like gravel and steel. "I need you to pull old emails from 2018, she told him. "Specifically anything from Luke's side about the house funding. There might be something casual, too casual." Richard didn't hesitate. On it. An hour later, her inbox pinged. Subject, found it. Body, Elaine, this should be enough to slap the lien. Let your legal team decide whether to press further. Attached, screenshot. As long as she doesn't ask for it back, we're fine. Luke C., March 14, 2018. Elaine stared at the screen. 5 years ago, they thought she'd fade quietly. They didn't know she archived every word like currency. That evening, she microwaved a single apple crumble and ate it in her favorite chair by the window. Rain tapped softly on the glass like punctuation. On the kitchen island sat the signed lien documents, the digital statement, the casual confession. She called her attorney, Janine. "Ready to escalate?" Elaine didn't blink. "I want the lien filed by end of day. Mark it undocumented equity transfer. Let's see how Luke defines generosity under oath." Meanwhile, across town, Kara stared at a thick envelope dropped through the mail slot with the silent weight of a gavel. Inside, notice of lien, Elaine's full itemization, bank statements. The printout of Luke's email. Underlined in red, Kara's hands trembled. Luke, standing behind her, was already pulling at his hair. "You said it wasn't official," she whispered. "I said she wouldn't ask," he muttered. "Well, she asked." Elaine stood in front of her mirror, fastening her sapphire earrings, the ones Luke once called outdated. Her phone buzzed. Text from Janine. "Leanne is live. They'll be notified by morning." Elaine tapped back 4 words. "Elaine, good. Let the math speak." The lien went live at 10:06 a.m. By 11:42, Luke was on hold with the bank. Elaine didn't hear that call, but she imagined every second of it. The way his voice would shift from confident to cracked, the awkward silence when the loan officer said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Connors, but this property shows an active claim." She didn't need to be in the room to taste the panic. It probably tasted like metallic sweat and swallowed pride. Kara had been clicking through Zillow all morning, obsessing over two-story homes in walkable neighborhoods. They'd assumed the equity would float them into a better school district. Maybe a backyard pool. Appraisal's just a formality, Luke had said. Worst case, we break even. They didn't expect the appraiser to pause in the foyer and check his tablet twice. This property has a pending lien. We can't move forward until it's resolved. What do you mean? Kara had asked, her voice brittle. The appraiser blinked. It means your house is legally contested. You didn't know? She didn't answer. Luke cursed. The appraiser packed up in silence and walked out. Elaine, meanwhile, was folding linens at her condo with the calm of someone who had already seen the ending. Her lawyer, Janine, had told her not to expect updates so soon. Banks move slow, she'd said. But apparently, panic doesn't. Elaine's phone buzzed at 2:07 p.m. It was an unknown number from the area code they'd moved to 5 years ago, the one she helped them afford. Mrs. Rafferty, this is Chase Mortgage. We were just calling to confirm the nature of the lien on the Birch Lane property. Elaine smiled and spoke clearly. That lien is accurate, verified, and supported by written evidence. Any attempt to refinance without my knowledge would be an attempt to bypass equity due to me. There was a pause, a sigh. We understand. Thank you for your time. Elaine returned to her tea and lemon cookie. She had waited years for boundaries. Now they were federally notarized. Across town, the kitchen grew quieter by the minute. Luke was pacing. Kara sat frozen on the edge of the breakfast nook, staring at the printed notice. She filed it, Kara whispered. She actually filed it. Luke stopped pacing. We need to call someone. She is someone, she said bitterly. She played us. No, Luke said, she beat us. Elaine received a flurry of texts from friends who still followed Kara on social media. You okay? She's posting weird stuff about betrayal and toxic energy. Thought she said you were like a mother to her? Girl, just tell me you're good. Elaine didn't reply right away. She logged in quietly, scrolled through Kara's vague post-sob stories, and liked exactly one photo, an old wedding picture with the caption, "Family is everything." Then she closed the app and opened her email. At 5:38 p.m., Janine's name lit up her screen. Subject, appraisal blocked body. Just a heads up, they tried to refinance. The lien flagged it immediately. Discovery phase begins Monday. I'll be calling Kara tomorrow morning. Want to listen in? Elaine replied. Put her on speaker. I want to hear the pause before her voice changes. The next morning, at 9:01 sharp, Janine dialed Kara and patched Elaine in. They sat in silence through the dial tone, the false cheer in Kara's hello. Hi, Kara, Janine said, all professionalism and steel. This is Janine Nichols, counsel for Mrs. Rafferty. Just wanted to let you know we're entering discovery in the equity claim against the Birch Lane property. A pause. Then, wait, discovery? That's a court thing, isn't it? It is, Janine said, smiling. Elaine could hear it in her voice. We'll be issuing formal document requests this week. Expect a delivery soon. Kara didn't speak. Luke's voice murmured in the background. Kara, Janine said gently, you might want to hold off on any more listings. The house isn't going anywhere just yet. Elaine ended the call and walked to her desk. She slid open the drawer where her sapphire pendant once lay. In its place now, a stamped binder labeled Evidence Chain, 2023. She ran her fingers over the cover and whispered, Time to turn the page. Elaine closed the binder marked Evidence Chain, 2023, then stood from her desk with the calm elegance of a woman who had just won the right to stop apologizing. Her sapphire pendant was still missing, but her appetite had returned, along with something else, presence. She walked to the kitchen, where a vase of tulips bloomed defiantly on the counter. That morning, she'd opened a new message thread titled Dinner, My Terms, and sent out 12 invites, followed by 8 more. Subject line, a little gathering to celebrate a clear mind and clear title. No RSVP necessary. They'd show. The dining room of her new condo glowed that evening, warm light pooling across the long oak table she'd had delivered from a local artisan. It still held the scent of lemon oil and new beginnings. Candles flickered in soft glass holders. The air smelled like rosemary, garlic, and red wine reduction. Elaine hadn't lifted a saucepan. She'd hired a private chef for the night. "Make it beautiful but not boastful," she'd instructed. "No gold leaf or nonsense, just taste, warmth, and dignity." Now, the clatter of forks, the hum of jazz from the Bluetooth speaker, and laughter, the old kind, the real kind, wove together like silk ribbon. Marcia from her book club was mid-toast. "To Elaine," she said, raising her glass, "who's finally eating somewhere she doesn't have to ask permission." They all laughed, then clinked glasses. Elaine smiled but didn't speak. She didn't need to. This was the sound of her silence being replaced. Over in Kara and Luke's house, the silence was of a colder kind. Luke scrolled through his phone with a clenched jaw. "She's hosting a dinner party?" Kara looked up from the iPad, eyes narrowing. "Is that Suzanne from Dad's side? She hasn't talked to us in 2 years. And that's her old nurse, the one we had to let go." Kara leaned closer. "She even got the real china out. Didn't she say she didn't need nice things?" "No," Luke muttered. "She said you didn't need her nice things." Elaine posted one photo before dessert, a wide shot of the room, candles glowing, wine glasses mid-clink, friends mid-laugh. In the foreground, the edge of her chair, her hand resting lightly on a linen napkin embroidered with the letter R. Caption: "Recovery's easier surrounded by respect." Tag, #, no permission needed. She didn't tag anyone specific, but she didn't have to. After dessert, Elaine slipped away to her bedroom. She opened a side drawer and pulled out a crisp, unused notebook. On the cover, "Next Steps." She jotted down 2 things. Invite trustee to tea. Publish photo album from tonight. Her guests were still sipping wine. She wasn't done hosting. She was just changing courses. Her phone buzzed. A comment on the photo. "Funny. Didn't Kara say she was caring for you around the clock? You look amazing." Another one. "Real friends know the smell of fresh rosemary, not resentment." She smiled, tucked her phone away, and returned to the party. Later, after the last guest had gone and the chef had packed up, Elaine stood alone in her kitchen. She ran her hand across the countertop. Smooth quartz, no crumbs, no criticism. She poured herself a single glass of Bordeaux, then stood by the window and looked out at the city lights. Freedom didn't need to shout. Sometimes it just needed a dinner party and a camera flash. The next morning, Elaine opened her laptop to schedule a post. A soft breeze moved through the open window behind her. She uploaded the rest of the dinner album, paused for a beat, and added one final line before clicking publish. She said, "I made the kitchen smell. I say this smells like legacy." Elaine's caption hung in the air like a chandelier lit by pure restraint. The comment section kept growing. Friends, neighbors, even her old PTA circle chiming in with quiet cheers and subtle confirmations. She didn't answer any of them. The post was for Kara and Luke, and it had done its job. They saw it. Which explained the knock on her condo door at 8:12 a.m. the next morning. Kara stood there, dressed too casually for sincerity, leggings, oversized hoodie, sunglasses she didn't need. Elaine didn't offer her coffee. "I need to talk," Kara said, stepping inside uninvited. "About us." Elaine motioned to the couch. "Then let's not waste breath pretending this is anything else." Kara didn't sit. Instead, she paced in slow figure eights around Elaine's modest living room, scanning the framed photos, the new orchids, the small bookshelf with titles like Understanding Power of Attorney and The Quiet Exit Strategy. "You really want this to go legal?" Kara asked. Elaine didn't answer. She just tilted her head slightly. Permission to continue, not agreement. Kara folded her arms. "You're breaking up the family." Elaine's eyes narrowed, but her tone didn't lift an inch. "You did that the moment you started counting my pills and my money." Kara blinked. "That's not fair. We were overwhelmed. Luke and I both work, and you were—" She paused, searching for softer language. "Not yourself. Elaine's laugh was quiet and cold. You mean I was recovering from surgery? The same surgery you told people you were sacrificing everything to support while charging groceries to my emergency card. Kara's mouth tightened, but she pushed forward. You're turning Scott against us. He won't even return my calls. Elaine's eyebrows lifted. You mean your brother? The one you mocked in the group chat for being too soft on me? Kara flushed. Her voice dropped. We were venting. No, Elaine said. You were strategizing. There's a difference. Kara finally sat down. Her hands shook as she reached for the couch pillow. An old nervous tic from childhood, still present now. You're serious about this court thing? Elaine stood across from her, arms folded. I filed the motion last Friday. Kara looked up sharply. You'll get the docket number this week, Elaine continued, along with the full complaint. Financial manipulation, emotional coercion, asset concealment. You're weaponizing a misunderstanding, Kara whispered. Elaine leaned forward just enough for the words to land. And you're learning what it feels like when your mother finally reads the fine print. That afternoon, Elaine's lawyer, Marlene Feldstein, called to confirm the court date. Your daughter filed a motion to delay, Marlene said. We responded with timestamps, the medication log, the financial records, and a copy of your updated trust. Elaine sat by the window, sunlight tracing the edge of her tea mug. Will the judge take it seriously? Oh, yes, Marlene said, especially once we show them the bank transfer trail and Luke's email about how she'll never ask for it back. Elaine didn't smile. She didn't need to. Instead, she opened her side table drawer and pulled out a small binder labeled June Testimony Packet. All right, she said. Schedule the hearing. I'll be ready. That night, Kara texted one last time. Please, let's talk. We can fix this. Elaine didn't respond, but she did take a photo of her court outfit, pressed navy blazer, pearl earrings and all, laid out neatly on her bed. She titled the file, Exhibit A, Prepared and Unshaken. The next morning, her phone buzzed again, this time from Marlene. Hearing confirmed. Friday, 10 a.m. It's happening. Elaine set down the phone, walked to the mirror, and practiced the calm expression she'd wear on the stand. Because regret wasn't hers to hold anymore. The burden had officially shifted. On Friday morning, Elaine zipped up her navy blazer at 8:12 a.m., just like she rehearsed. Her earrings were the same ones she wore when she retired from teaching, a small, shining signal that she still knew when to command a room. On her kitchen counter sat her final checklist. Medication log, highlighted credit card statements, tabbed caregiver notes, chronologically filed 3 notarized letters from her orthopedic surgeon, nurse, and financial advisor. She slipped the packet into her leather folder and walked out the door. Not limped, not shuffled, walked. The courthouse was colder than expected. Artificial air, buzzing lights, the faint click of heels across polished tile. Kara was already seated in the hallway. Luke beside her, posture stiff. They didn't look at Elaine as she passed. She didn't look back. Inside the courtroom, it wasn't dramatic. There was no jury box, just a judge in wire-rimmed glasses and a clerk with a laptop. Marlene whispered beside her, "Let the paperwork speak, but when the judge asks, just be yourself. Yourself is winning." Elaine nodded once. That was the only permission she needed. When the judge asked her to begin, Elaine didn't glance at Kara. She opened her folder with the same grace she once used turning pages in a classroom. "I'd like to start with this," she said calmly, holding up a laminated sheet. Disbursement log. Emergency account, April through June. It shows every transaction made using my private funds while I was under recovery. She turned the page. Here are the text messages between myself and the visiting nurse, noting medication doses skipped or delayed. Another page. This is my orthopedic surgeon's signed letter confirming I was never cognitively impaired, despite comments made to the contrary in court filings and on social media. A beat of silence followed. Then Elaine looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor, I was recovering from surgery. What I wasn't doing was losing my mind." Kara shifted in her chair. Luke rubbed his temple like he wanted to vanish into the floor. Marlene stood for the closing clarification. "To be Clear, Your Honor, the plaintiff is not requesting criminal charges today. She is requesting protection of assets, repayment of misused funds, and legal acknowledgement that she was financially manipulated during a vulnerable period. The judge tapped his pen slowly, then looked up. Thank you, Mrs. Carter. Your documentation is thorough. Elaine gave a small nod. It had to be. The judge turned to Kara. Does the defense have anything to submit? Kara stood shakily. Your Honor, we weren't trying to take anything. We were just overwhelmed. It's been a rough few years. Emotionally. The judge didn't blink. I'm sure. But overwhelmed doesn't cancel documentation. Luke tried to chime in, but his voice cracked under pressure. She offered to help us. She never said it was a loan. Elaine spoke for the first time since sitting down. Funny. I never said it was a gift either. The judge raised a hand, signaling the end of open statements. We'll reconvene next week for the final ruling, he said, but based on documentation, witness statements, and preliminary review of medical evidence, preliminary favor leans toward the plaintiff. He gave one last glance to Kara. Ms. Wallace, if you have anything stronger than feelings, now's the time to prepare it. Elaine left the courtroom in the same calm stride she entered with. But as she passed Kara in the hallway, she paused only once, reaching into her folder and handing her daughter a printed quote. It was clipped from Kara's old birthday card to her, dated 5 years ago. Thanks for giving us the roof we never could have afforded on our own. Elaine smiled. Don't worry, I kept the receipt. Then walked away, heels clicking softly, with no more weight to carry but her own. The ruling came exactly 9 days later. Elaine didn't need to mark her calendar. Her body remembered. Every step in her new home had led her to this moment, the arch of her spine now straighter than it had been in months, her breath deeper, even in stillness. The call came at 8:44 a.m. sharp. Her attorney, Marlene, never wasted time on pleasantries. It's done, she said. Full ruling in your favor. Restitution or forfeiture. Elaine leaned against the countertop, the polished marble cool beneath her fingers. Details. Marlene took a beat. Kara and Luke are ordered to repay the $50,000 in full, plus attorney's fees. They can't refinance without clearing the lien, or they walk from the house and the equity goes to you. Elaine closed her eyes. For a brief moment she felt the phantom ache of recovery again, not in her hip, but in her heart. I'll take the equity, she said. Word spread quickly. Luke's truck was gone from the driveway by Saturday. Kara's garden sat unwatered. Neighbors peeked through blinds, piecing together rumors with every moving box they spotted. Elaine didn't post about it. She didn't need to. Instead, she sat on her patio that morning, cinnamon tea steeping beside her, a small stack of paperwork in her lap. One of them was a formal housing transfer letter. Another, a clean title reissue, listing Elaine Margaret Wallace as lien holder on record. No longer a footnote, no longer invisible. Kara tried to call twice. Elaine let both go to voicemail. The third time she left a message. You win, Mom. Happy now? We're scrambling here. We had plans. Elaine didn't return the call, but she did screenshot the transcript. She saved it under a new folder. Entitlement, Exhibit G. Just in case. 3 days later, her doorbell rang. It wasn't Kara. It was a woman in an ivory trench coat, holding a leather tote and a clipboard. Elaine Wallace? She asked. Yes? I'm with Sunfold Publishing, she said. I know this is forward, but one of our team read the court documents online. Public record. Your testimony caught some attention. Elaine raised an eyebrow. The woman smiled. We're wondering if you've ever considered writing a memoir. Elaine blinked. About what? About all of it. The surgery, the erasure, the silence, and then the turn. The words stirred something dormant in Elaine. Not rage, not revenge, resonance. Working title? The woman asked. Elaine glanced down at the patio table where her court ruling sat beside her tea. Then she smiled, slow, precise. Recovery, she said, from hip surgery to power play. That night, Elaine opened her laptop and began typing. First a title page, then fragments of memory, then paragraphs that came like clockwork. The first sentence she wrote? They thought caretaking was a favor. I gave them a down payment, a second chance, and half my privacy, until they turned it into leverage. Her fingers flew across the keys like they had in the days when she graded papers after midnight. Only this time, the red pen was gone. Now she held the final word. The next morning, Elaine stepped outside to retrieve her mail and found an envelope with no return address. Inside, a card. You've made your point, but you've lost your daughter. Elaine stared at it for a long moment, then walked back inside, placed it gently in her shredder, and hit start. Over the soft whir of blades, her phone buzzed again. It was from the publisher. Subject: Let's talk timeline. This could be big. Elaine smiled. Let them call her high maintenance. She called it legacy. Elaine didn't reply to the publisher's email right away. She lit a sandalwood candle, let Nina Simone hum through her kitchen, and sliced blood oranges for a new water pitcher. That afternoon, she'd teach 2 women from her online community how to scan legal contracts for hidden clauses. She no longer filled her hours with appeasement. She filled them with power. The next morning, she swiped open her calendar. 9 a.m., chair yoga in the solarium. 11:30 a.m., brunch at Lavender Finch. 2 p.m., call with the attorney for her speaking rights. 4 p.m., Zoom, Estate Armor 101, hosted by her and 3 women who used to call themselves retired. She scrolled through the guest list, already over 70 signups. Elaine adjusted the camera ring light on her desk. She'd been doing these monthly now, private sessions for women over 60 who wanted to protect their assets, their autonomy, and their time. I'm not a lawyer, she often said, but I can tell you what almost cost me mine. And they listened. Because unlike YouTube influencers, Elaine had scars. At brunch, the waitress greeted her with a hug. Sapphire necklace again? She asked, beaming. Elaine smiled, fingering the pendant that had once sat in a pawnshop like it meant nothing. It's back where it belongs, she said, adding softly, like me. Across the table sat Anita, her neighbor in Unit C, who used to be a nurse. To Elaine's right, Val, a former IRS analyst. Together they made up the Overdraft Club, a name they coined for women who'd once been emotionally overdrawn by the people they loved most. Now they met weekly, no pity, just Prosecco and plans. That night, Elaine reviewed the quarterly report from her new silent investment, Solacewell, a home care startup led by women and built on transparency and dignity. It had been her financial advisor's idea, but the moment Elaine met the founder, a single mom who'd cared for her own mother through cancer, she knew where her trust fund dividends belonged. I want no title, Elaine had said, signing the wire transfer. Just impact. The founder wept. I'll make sure no one ever feels like you did, she said. You'll do better, Elaine replied. Make sure they never get there in the first place. 2 days later, a manila envelope appeared in her mailbox. This one bore no venom. Just wait. She opened it over the kitchen counter. Invitation to speak. National Elder Advocacy Conference, D.C. Inside, a single handwritten note. We followed your case. Your quiet refusal to back down. It's what policy forgets and women remember. We hope you'll share your story, unedited. Elaine didn't cry. She brewed a pot of Earl Grey, walked to the window, and watched the sun settle behind the trees that lined her new street. No whispers behind closed doors, no footsteps counting her pills, just wind, gently brushing the rosemary by her porch. That night, she opened her laptop again. Subject line, Elder Advocacy Conference, keynote speaker. Thank you for the invitation. I accept. One condition, I speak last. On Saturday afternoon, Elaine stood before her full-length mirror, smoothing the lapels of her navy blazer, the same one she'd worn to court, now paired with soft pearls and sharper resolve. She'd gone over her speech 3 times but tucked the note cards away. The truth didn't need rehearsal anymore. Outside, her car service waited. As she stepped into the back seat, cane folded neatly beside her, the driver asked, "Big day?" She smiled faintly. "Just a small talk?" she said, as they pulled away toward the National Elder Advocacy Conference, where every seat would soon face her. The ballroom was warmer than she expected, lit in soft gold, the kind of glow meant to flatter legacy rather than spotlight grief. Elaine stood just behind the stage curtain, steadying herself, not on her cane, but on memory. A decade ago, she would have thought keynote speaker meant someone with a louder voice. Now she knew better. It meant someone who'd survived being silenced and learned to speak in stone. Her introduction came with polite applause, the usual readout of credentials, and a vague nod to a nationally followed elder rights case. She stepped onto the stage without hesitation, her sapphire pendant catching light. "Good evening," she said. They quieted. "I came here tonight because someone once called me high maintenance," she began, letting it hang just long enough for the women in the back row to shift in their seats. "I was recovering from surgery in a house I helped pay for. I was told I should be grateful for soup. I was tracked, edited, and eventually erased, until I chose to rewrite the terms." She told them everything: the silent nights, the whispered comments, the accidental overdrafts, the lien, the trial, the note she left behind on a kitchen counter, and the email that followed it, the one that changed her name from burden to plaintiff. She didn't raise her voice once, and yet the room, by the end, was still, as if truth, when finally delivered by someone no longer afraid, had its own microphone. She ended her speech with the line, "They called me high maintenance. I called it asset protection." Afterward, a woman approached her near the water station. "My daughter says I'm lucky to live with her. After your speech, I'm wondering if it's luck or silence." Elaine didn't respond right away. She placed a hand on the woman's arm and said, "Start reading your receipts." The next morning, Elaine transferred $10,000 from her Asset Protection Trust directly into the National Elder Legal Defense Fund. Her note was short: "For the next woman who isn't believed until she breaks something or someone." She didn't wait for thanks. She wasn't donating for recognition. She was funding ammunition. 2 days later, she posted a photo to her social media account: a glass of Malbec, the sunrise over her porch garden, and her legs, crossed, relaxed, unbothered. Caption: "Never underestimate a woman with a walker, a will, and a war chest." By noon, it had 22,000 shares. The comments weren't just likes. They were women saying, "Same." They were daughters saying, "You gave me courage." They were lawyers saying, "I'm taking this one to court on Monday." Later that week, Kara emailed her, short, cautious. Subject: "Hope you're healing body. Just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. We were overwhelmed. Luke didn't mean it. Can we talk?" Elaine didn't reply. She archived the message and smiled faintly at the irony. The same people who once micromanaged her prescription schedule now waited on a response like a courtroom summons. On Saturday, her front door buzzed. A delivery, cream linen envelopes. Inside, final book proofs, recovery, From Hip Surgery to Power Play by Elaine Winters. She ran her hand over the title, not because of pride, because no one else had. That night she poured herself a bourbon, lit the fireplace, and opened her laptop. Under her name, the bio now read, "Elaine Winters Advocate, Mentor, Legal Educator, not high maintenance, high value." She leaned back into the armchair she'd picked herself, in the home she bought herself, under lights no one else had dimmed. Her life had been reframed, not repainted, same bones, new blueprint, and finally, completely hers.